Oh my God. Well, everybody, this we have a special treat for you tonight. I mean, this
Wow.
this takes me back to my childhood, and I'm sure Jimmy's as well. We
Absolutely.
have the wonderful Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, David Newell. Welcome, David, to our show, Jimmy Deal's Celebrities Podcast.
Thank you, and speedy delivery. Oh,
Speedy delivery.
I'll make it official. I'll give you a little taste of McFeely. Here
Oh,
you
wow.
go.
Love
I love
that.
that. Oh my God.
Love
Yeah.
This
that.
is one of my original hats that I used on the program, and I keep this one here at home as a memento of all those many years. But I wore this often on the program. I had I went through about 10 different uniforms over the years,
Did you?
but I've kept some of the hats, and this is one of them. So that's what I look like. In case your viewers have never seen Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I was the speedy delivery man and still am, really. And I wore a costume, and that was the hat of the costume.
So great.
And now it says there's somebody there. It says, I have a question. What is it?
We have a first question. Yeah.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Can you read that? What was it
says, I have
like,
a
David?
question. What
Go ahead, David.
was it like working with Fred Rogers, and was he considered to be your
Mentor.
You know,
There you go.
he was my mentor. He was the perfect teacher. You could learn so much from Fred if you had to listen and observe him. He didn't say, now here's why I'm doing this, but you would just observe. And if you had any questions, you'd say, Fred, why did you do that instead of that, whatever that would be? And he would answer you, and we could learn that way. But it was wonderful. He was the real thing. What you saw on the program is what you got when you met him in person. He was the real thing. There was no artifice. He was a gentle, smart man, very smart, and very talented. He wrote all the music, and he operated the puppets, and he did the voices of the puppets and wrote the scripts. So it really was Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. A pleasure to work with him.
Wow. Now, David, you started as a theater actor working in Pittsburgh, right? Did you have any intention of getting into television at all?
In a way, I did. Yes, I worked at the Pittsburgh Playhouse for years. It's one of the top regional theaters in the country, and I worked there and went to school there. And then, as I was working there, stage managing, and I was in the children's theater that they had every weekend. I was the host of the children's theater, and the name of the host was Bimbo the Clown. That was me.
Wow.
Bimbo. You couldn't do that now, but that was the name. At any rate, I was the clown at the Playhouse, and as I was working, Channel 13 WQED was thriving in Pittsburgh, the public station, and every so often they would take on interns or apprentices, whatever you want to call them,
Right.
and volunteers. That's it. And so I went up and I decided I was going to volunteer and learn something about television. Well, that's how I got my foot in the door, I guess, and that's how, in a way, I met Fred Rogers. But I was there about a year before the program actually started. It was the spring of 1967. I was working as a volunteer. I went to Europe for that summer to visit my cousin. He was working in London. He was in the Army or the Navy. And I went to visit him, and I got a telegram at the American Express office from a mutual friend saying, Fred Rogers is going to take the program national. It was regional. And I've given him your name, and you're going to meet him on September 15th, whatever the day it was.
Right.
And I came back, met Fred, and here I am talking to you two.
Wow. Now, he hired you right on the spot, right? Didn't he?
He did, but he had talked to other people. I wasn't the only one he spoke to. There were people that he was interviewing, and I was one of the last, I guess. I guess I was the last because he was waiting till I returned. And I talked to him for about an hour. I remember the day so vividly. It was a boardroom of the TV station, and he had a bunch of scripts with him, and he talked all about where I was in Europe. He said, for an hour, we didn't even talk about the program. He asked me about, where did you go? Where did you visit? Did you go there? Did you go here? And I told him, and he said, and then he told me about his first trip was to Egypt. And he went there because he was studying theology.
Right.
And About an hour into our discussion, no programs being talked about, he said, "When can you start?"
Wow, that's so
and
great.
I think that's how he was interviewing me. He was interviewing me to find out, is this gonna work? And that's how he interviewed. He was interviewing the person, not the person who has the skills, but the person.
Right.
And I think I had the skills that he wanted. And I think he knew that. Fred
Wow.
is very perceptive, very intuitive. And so here I am. And I thought I had a job for 1 year because we were going to do 130 programs in black and white.
Wow.
And then we didn't know what was going to happen. And we did 130, and the Sears Roebuck company at the time was Sears Roebuck, gave us money to do a second season. That was in color, and there were 65. So we did 65 from then on. And here I am.
Amazing.
It was the perfect job for me to work with Fred Rogers, and I loved every moment of it.
Well, you were also the prop guy and a public relations for the TV station as well.
But that came in stages. I was hired to be the production assistant coordinator. Oh, here's how he said it too. Then after he said, "When can you start?" He said, "Here's what you need to do. Take these scripts, and you're going to be in charge of getting all the props and the costumes. Everything is listed there. Read the scripts. And oh, by the way," he said, "before you go, I've written in a delivery man. I want you to play him too."
How cool is that?
He knew that I had some acting experience, and I never did Macbeth or Hamlet, but I was in plays and summer stock. And he said, and he said, and the advantage of you playing Mr. McFeely is that you're younger, and we can do flashbacks where you're the younger Mr. McFeely. So a lot of those were, especially in the early years, we did the young McFeely too. Then I grew into my part, actually.
Wow.
But the other thing is, I know, the first day that we taped, I had all the props ready and everything ready to go, and I was standing in the studio in this costume. And I was waiting, the phone rang, and it was Sears Roebuck calling, the president of the foundation, calling to wish us well and say, "We love the program, we love the concept, et cetera, et cetera." And he said, "But don't call the delivery man Mr. McCurdy." That was the name of my character, McCurdy, because McCurdy was the name of the president of Sears Roebuck Foundation, and they thought it was a little too close for comfort. So he said, "That's the only thing we request. If you could just change, it's a little too close for comfort. Maybe it's a little self-serving. They thought on their part to have that in." At any rate, he came to the studio, and I could tell something. He was thinking about something. He came up to me and said, "We have to get you another name." And before he finished the sentence, practically, he said, "McFeely. That's who you are. You're Mr. McFeely," because his name is Fred McFeely Rogers.
Yeah.
And it's that name is there's Western Pennsylvania is where Pittsburgh is, and the McFeely name, it's Scottish, and there's a lot of McFeely families and names. It's not an unusual name around the Pittsburgh area. So I think that's why he's often said, "Why did I name you Mr. McFeely?" I hope people, for the obvious reasons. But he never thought of it. I never thought of it, but I'm Mr. McFeely, and it really is a popular name in the Pittsburgh area.
Yeah. Doc, what do you have for
I wanted to ask one of the questions that Tom asked. He said, "Do you have a favorite show or episode with Fred Rogers?"
Oh boy, we did over almost 1,000 of them.
Pick one. It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. Well, that's like asking how many shows have you guys done? And I think I always go back to this one, and it was with Margaret Hamilton, who you must know.
I remember that one. Yeah.
The Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
And one day, how was this? The Wizard of Oz was always shown on commercial television, remember?
Right.
And somebody said, "I'm going to watch Wizard of Oz tonight, but it still scares me." This was in the 70s, not recently. And it still scares me because as a kid, I was terrified of that witch and those flying monkeys. And I told Fred, I said, Fred, do you think that you could ever write a script about scary images? You know, not just witches, but scary images. And you know, I told him the story about. He said, well, if you can get Margaret Hamilton, if you can find her, I'll write the script.
So
So
cool.
I called around, and she was touring in a musical, I believe, and she also was doing. I don't know if you guys remember the commercial. It was a Maxwell House coffee
Absolutely.
commercial.
Yep. Yep.
Cora,
Cora. Yep.
Cora, the Max Cora, the general stores or something like that, and she was doing that. She did a lot of them. She lived in New York City, and I got a hold of her agent, and she said I'd love to do it because her grandchildren. She watched the neighborhood with her grandchildren. And later on, is after she said yes, I was going through actually the program guide of Channel 13 in New York, WNET's program guide. Now, this is years ago. And there were letters to the editor, and there was a letter from Margaret Hamilton to the magazine saying, I love Sesame Street. I watch it with my grandchildren, and please give Mr. Rogers a big hug for me. And I saw that after she said yes. You know, I just happened to see a back issue. And I said, oh, good. She really does like the program and knows it. And I think that was my favorite time. She was a lovely person. And we went to see her. My wife and I, not wife at the time, but I met my wife at the program, and we flew to Boston to see her in Little Night Music. She was playing her Maya Gingle part in Little Night Music and touring with it. And we went to the matinee and then met her afterwards and took the scripts to her. And she said, well, I'm looking forward. And she became a friend. In fact, every Sunday night after all of this was over, she would call after we were married, and she called us every Sunday night to chat. And then when our son we have 3 kids, and when our middle son was born, she heard about it. And she said, pick me up at the Pittsburgh airport. I'm going to fly in to see your son, spend the day, and then you can take me back to the airport. And I did. I met her at the airport, took her to the studio so she could visit with Fred, and then brought her home. And I have a picture of her holding our son on her lap. And oh yes, and the phone rang. It was one of our neighbors, and the neighbor said, did I just see the Wicked Witch of the West go into your kitchen?
well, David, you know what's funny about that is she got so much negative publicity because she was the Wicked Witch, and she wanted to change her persona. That's why she went on there to show kids, listen, I'm as harmless as you can be. You know, I'm a sweet person. And she was.
Oh, and she was. And you're absolutely right. That's exactly what she did. She wanted to go on and talk about it, especially for children's programs. She did one for Sesame Street, too. I don't know if that was before or after us, but she went on Sesame, too, and did it. But ours was a little different because she came in in her civilian clothes and then put on the outfit. We had one that was similar to the one in the movie.
Right.
And she said this, what you just said. She said, you know, I'm a nice person. I just want children to know that my job is being an actress.
Right.
And I pretended that I was this scary witch. And, you know, when we had letters afterwards, positive letters saying, thank you so much. It really helped our family. It gave us a door to open to talk about this scary image that kids would run behind the couch and hide when Margaret.
Absolutely.
But you know, comparing that to some movies today, it's mild. You know, but at any rate, it is when you think of it, it is scary. It was just on the verge of being tongue in cheek and scary. You know, and I think it verged more to being scary. Oh, now here it says, do you think that Fred and the cast had that big of an impact on children until you went on an appearance? Or is that what they're asking?
Yes.
Yeah. You know that is so true. when we first started making the program, you feel, and you guys experience the same thing. You're doing the program for four walls. You don't get a feedback. We never had a studio audience.
Right.
And the first time that Fred Rogers went out to another public station, we would go to public stations and then they'd have Meet Mr. Rogers Day. We went to the one in Boston, and it was free. You didn't have to pay for it, but they had tickets. No, they didn't have tickets the first time. They said, come and meet Mr. Rogers from 10 o'clock. He'll be here all day. They thought they'd get 500 people. They got 8,000 people.
Oh,
lined around the block. And Fred stayed till he did every last one. And then you do see the impact the program has when you go at it. And I don't think the public television at that time, this was the late 60s, early 70s, realized, and this is before Sesame Street too, realized the impact that public television had to get that program out to all those people. And it happened in other cities too. But at any rate, yes, that showed that somebody was watching.
Tell us about your working relationship with Fred Rogers. You guys were very close.
Yes, Fred had a perfect sense of humor. He was a very funny man, and I'm trying to think of an example of I know. They show a sense of humor. The crew played a trick on him one time. You may have seen this on some outtake shows, but he wore sneakers and then he changed back into his loafers into the program. Well, we taped in segments, so the last segment where he gets into his shoes was about 3 minutes. So the crew knew that if we ruined that take, it wouldn't be that bad. So he was okay. We're going to do the ending, and he sang a song, sat down, and tried to put his foot into the sneaker, and he couldn't get it in. And it was 3 sizes smaller. It looked like his, but it was 3 sizes smaller. And he said, "What is wrong?" And the crew started to laugh. And whose sneakers, whose shoes are they? And it was one of the crew guys, and he really laughed. And he was that kind of person. And they knew the day to do it. If we were running behind schedule and we were an hour into overtime, they wouldn't have done it. But they did it, and he had the biggest charge out of that. He laughed, and he made it through the next one, but he almost broke because he thought of what the crew just did. So that just shows his sense of humor, and he got along so well. He loved the crew, the people he worked with. In fact, after we stopped taping, his wife would say that Fred would come home and say, well, after a day in the office, I miss my playmates. but I think in some ways, after we stopped, he was really working around the clock with doing these programs. I think that he did in many ways miss the taping of the program, but I think he needed a break. But then what he was going to do, what he wanted to do after we stopped taping the programs. He wanted to get into radio like you guys. He loved to talk to people, and he wanted to do a radio interview show where he could talk to anybody, not on a show that had to produce ratings. He didn't want to do that. That was not what he wanted to do. He wanted to do radio that people would select to listen to. He knew that it wasn't going to get ratings. He wanted to just offer it, but he never got a chance to do it. But that's what he really wanted to do, talk to.
Crazy.
And he didn't have to worry about makeup, and he hated getting into makeup. He hated to get all of that on and the eye stuff. He never liked that. He liked the neighborhood of make-believe, doing the puppets. He liked the writing. He liked everything, but being on camera, you'd never know it. And that was it was a necessary evil too, but that's not what he liked. The makeup really got to him, I think, because he wasn't an actor. You know, he that's not who he was. He was a communicator and a teacher, but he wasn't. But in some ways, being Mr. Rogers, there's a little acting to it, a little acting, but you had there are certain lines you had to say, but nevertheless, he saw himself as a communicator.
Wow.
Anyhow, I'm rattling on here. Do you
That's great.
No, that's beautiful.
He did all the voices too to all the puppets. He wrote the scripts. He did all the music. What a brilliant guy! I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, he didn't do every voice of the puppets, but he did 90% of them. Harriet the cow was done by Bob Trow, who played Bob Dog. And there was an elephant, H.J. Elephant, that was done by Chuck Aber, who was one of the actors on the program, Neighbor Aber. And there was a girl who did, Carol Muller was her name, and she did one of the platypus, Anna Platypus. So there were some other people who did some puppets, but Fred did the main puppets, King Friday, Daniel Tiger, all of those. But he wrote the music. And in the early days, there was a program called The Children's Corner. It went on the air in 1954, and it was a local program in Pittsburgh. And he was the puppeteer, and he wrote the music. But there was a woman out front whose name was Josie Carey, and she was the sort of the Fran Allison, you know, like Kukla Fran and Ollie. Some of your viewers may not know that, but it was a program in the 50s, and Fran talked to all the different puppets. And that's what the Children's Corner was like, only it was local. Anyhow, it just shows how particular Fred is. She came in, she wrote a song, one of the songs that Fred still uses. It's called, it was called I Like You Like You Are. And she came in with that. And Fred said, oh, Josie, you know, that's wonderful song, but we can't it's not correct English. We have to change it to I like you as you are. A minor change, and I like you are is catchier and all of that. But that was Fred. That's how particular he was. He didn't want to, if he had the chance, to be particular about what children are hearing. And yeah, I agree. Everybody says, oh, I like you are is much catchier, but that's not Fred. He wanted to do it the correct way, and he did. And the song was still used, and he wrote the music to it, and I think she wrote the lyrics. I'm not quite sure, but Fred did, I would say, 90% of the music. Josie, some of her songs are still used, and she's since passed away too. She was a wonderful lyricist. But did you know that the Children's Corner, the program, it was national on Saturday mornings for about a year or 2 years at NBC. They would do it in Pittsburgh live, and then fly to Pittsburgh and to New York City and do it on NBC on Saturday mornings, then fly back to Pittsburgh. And that was I guess his introduction to New York and to getting people to see what he did. But he was the real thing. There was no and his wife would always say, what you see is what you get. That was Fred. And so, you know, he was easy to work with, but not easy to work with. He was very particular, like I like you are.
Right.
And what he wanted, he usually got. But he would say it in a way and tell you, I don't like that. He wouldn't say that. He would say that's not correct English, and I think we should use it in a correct way. Things like that. But he expected a lot from people, and because he delivered 100% all the time. A wonderful man.
Now, when he started his career, right, didn't he work at WNBC? He worked on the TV show The Hit Parade and the Opera Theater.
Oh, he did. That's when, after he left college, he was in Rollins College in Florida studying music. He got a job. However, I don't know how that happened, but he got a job through his musical training, because he studied opera and composition and piano. So it was the perfect job for him to work on the Hit Parade and the voice of Firestone, which was a popular classical, and the NBC Opera Theater. Can you imagine opera on NBC now?
Yeah.
But he did. But
Oh,
and there was a program called Your Hit Parade, and every Saturday evening live they would count down the top 10 songs in the country, and Fred was the floor manager. But also the one that I loved, growing up, I loved Roy Rogers. Isn't it ironically I worked for Fred Rogers, but Roy Rogers' sidekick was Gabby Hayes. I don't know if you remember Gabby Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
He was this old time like a prospector, beard, and he was Roy Rogers' sidekick in all of his movies. At any rate, in the 50s, he had a show on NBC National on Saturday mornings, the live cut-ins to the Westerns. Gabby would introduce the Western. Hi, buckaroos. Not today. We're going to that type of thing. And Fred would be the floor manager that would say, "You're on, Mr. Hayes," that type of thing. And between the commercials and so forth, he would talk to Gabby. And one day he said, "Mr. Hayes, what do you think when you're talking to all those millions of children watching you?" He said, "Freddie, I just think of that one little buckaroo." And in a way, that's what Fred does. In a way, he thinks of that. He's talking to that one child, and it's talking and the way he did with using a television camera as he did is not easy. You know, it's one thing to read the news, which is very difficult. That's a talent in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But talking into the camera is not easy. You have no feedback, and sometimes he would wing it. He knew what he wanted to say. Other times, if there were things he had to follow, it was on the prompter. But he made it sound like he was making it up at the moment. He had a skill of using the camera, and I don't think a lot of people appreciated all of what it took to put that program together. To get on and talk to that audience was a talent, a rare talent, to be able to take information, very intricate information, and synthesize it down so a preschooler could comprehend. He did that with Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch and the scary images. But we did a week on divorce of all. We talked about that. That was the most requested subject we had over the years through the fan mail. Could you help us with that topic, Mr. Rogers? Our family's going through this terrible situation, and other letters came in similar to that. And Fred said it took him 5 years to figure out how to do it. It's not an easy thing to do. And finally, he did it in a week. But on a Sunday night, there was a live, like a Phil Donahue show, a studio audience, and Fred and some experts would talk about it. This went to adults. And then the next Monday, the whole week was devoted, the program was devoted to children and talking about the subject of divorce. And he did some tough subjects. And we did death. Oh, do we have time to tell you about this?
Sure.
One of the first shows we did, his father passed away during the first year of our taping the show, and he's very close to his dad, very close to his family, and he could tell he missed his father, and he put it into a script. He knew what he was going through as an adult, and he wanted to help children in some way, and he thought, well, we can't have a grandfather die or somebody in the neighborhood. And he thought, and this isn't a production meeting, he said, I know, I'm going to have one of the fish in the tank die. He had I don't know if you remember, we had a fish tank.
That one, yeah.
I remember it, sure.
And he discovered there was a dead fish in the tank, which prompted him to talk about, and he showed the children, he wrapped it in the paper towel, took it out and buried it. And he related how sad he felt when his dog died when he was little. And he brought all of that in, talking about the emotion that goes along with loss. And Now it's really a quintessential. I guess that's the word, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers.
Close enough.
But in the production meeting, you have to make these programs, and you have to talk about how you're going to do this. And Fred said, I don't want to kill a fish, but we need a dead fish. And I happen to be, I have, well, I don't know if you can see it behind me. There's a fish tank, and all my years I've had a tropical fish tank. And I said, Fred, every time I go into a pet store to buy some fish, invariably there's a dead fish in the tank. I'll go to the pet shop and ask him, and I never forget that it was the name of the pet shop was the Art's Pet Shop in downtown Pittsburgh. And I walked in, and he said, "Can I help you?" Yes. And could I have those 2 dead fish? And then he just looked at me. And
that is a weird request. You got to understand
it. I'm glad to get rid of them anyhow. But
oh, sure.
So then I explained, probably wondering, I'm not crazy. Here's what we're doing. And then they understood. I said, do I, how much do I owe you? He said, they're on the house. But, that's the humorous part of doing a very sensitive program that I had as a prop person, had to go out and find the fish and set the tank up and so forth. But we did not kill a fish to do that program. It had already expired in the pet shop.
So, David, before we get back to Jimmy, a question. I got a question from Tom, and I want to kind of a little bit more of that question. So, what was it like working with some of these famous people that evolved later as big movie stars or TV stars, like Michael Keaton as an intern? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Michael Keaton ran the trolley. He was on the program. He worked for the public station. He was an employee of the WQED floor crew. And when we would rent the studio, they would supply the camera and the floor and crew and so forth. And Michael was one of the roustabouts, so to speak, and he would be the one who would be assigned to run the trolley. And one day I was in my McFeely outfit, and I was waiting to go on. He walked over to me and said, David, boy, I'd like to be an actor. I don't think Michael would ever remember this, but I remembered because he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He walked over and said, I'd like to get into acting. I said, well, I have a friend, Michael. This was back in the late 60s, early 70s. I have a friend who runs a summer theater. You should go out and audition. And he did, and they were doing the production of Lenny, about Lenny Bruce.
Lenny Bruce, the comedian. Yeah.
And that was the name of it. It was a show about Lenny. And he auditioned, and somebody else. He did not get the part because at the time he was 25 or younger, maybe, and somebody else got the part. And I said to my friend, "Do you know who you turned down?" He said, "Oh, I know. He was so good." So good, wonderful reading, but he was so young because Lenny at the time had to be sort of beat up, and he was a beat up comedian, very funny, but he lived a rough life, I think. And Michael looked like this young kid, but so from that point on. Then he moved to California, and somebody from WQED also went out. It was a writer, and he wrote a part for Michael in a show, and one thing led to another, and Michael took off. But his first movie was with Henry Winkler. Night Shift. It was called.
Night Shift. Yeah,
and
remember
Michael
that? Yeah.
He played a very sort of cocky, always on and that was Michael. Michael was like that in real life. He's always had a quip, very funny guy. He was I know another thing. After one day after the we were taping was done, I went upstairs to our office, and Fred said, "I'll be up in a minute. The crew wants to show me something," and they put together a little sketch that they had written, and they wanted him to see it. And about 10 minutes later, Fred came up laughing to himself, and I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "The crew just did this sketch with the crew," and he said, "That Michael is going to be a star." And I never forgot that. Fred saw that in him. He said he's going to be a star, and because from what he saw in that little sketch that they put together, and he proved Fred right.
Yeah. He was Batman.
And listen, just an amazing person, right? Amazing. He turned into an amazing character, but you guys started him out. That's got to make you feel so good, to take somebody's career and just create that career for them, just by the words you say and what you've done.
But Michael he would have done that. He was.
I know, but you've helped him.
Yeah,
a lot.
Maybe you made it a little
encouragement.
Because he did work at the public station where there were other people who were moving to California too. They weren't going out to sell Fuller brushes; they were going out to work in the movie business. And so when one got a job, you help one another, and that's true. That did help. But Michael had a drive, and you knew he was going to make it, and he did. And he's still very active.
Yeah.
We have another question there. Fred Rogers had the courage to make a case for funding for public television, and he did at that point in time. He saved public television.
Oh, he did. He did. Yeah. I remember. I wasn't there. I remember when he went down, and it's on YouTube. You can see his testimony. And what he did, I don't know if the whole clip is on YouTube, but he had a prepared speech on paper, and forget the senator said, "Don't read it. I've heard so much today.
Yes,
just tell me in your own words." And what you heard Fred say was from the heart, and it was. And at the end of the speech, for those viewers who haven't seen this clip, Fred went through the whole how he believes television should be and why we need money for public television, because it is supportive of children, young children. And it was, I'm just paraphrasing, but at the very end, the Pastore, that was Senator Pastore said, "It looks like you've just got your $20 million." And that then was a fortune. 20 million probably wouldn't pay for the limo of the stars now. But Fred did have a courage. He was a brave man, and he really lived his faith. He was an early to bed, early to rise. Or he get up about 5 a.m. religiously, and would write. He would read the Bible. He was, he had a theology degree. Yeah. He would do write to friends. He would work on the scripts. Then he would go and swim a mile, come back and eat, and come to the studio. And he had a whole day put in before the rest of us got there. But he'd go home and go to bed early though too. Wow. But he and it was the discipline. I think to get a lot of things done, you can do it, but it's discipline. And he had that discipline, and I think that's a part of his success too. All of it, he had the discipline to study child development, the discipline to go to theological school and study, and not so. I don't know if he ever really wanted to have a pulpit or be in a church, but I think it was I can't ask. I'm just guessing that he wanted the values. He wanted more, so he could work from what he learned in theology school, and it really helped him put together scripts and write songs, and it was right for him. But it takes discipline. You working all day in a TV studio. This is before the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And he would produce the show, be on it, then take a lunch break and go take a class in Hebrew, then back in the afternoon and go home. He had 2 young boys at the time, and be with them, write some more, get up, do the whole thing over again. It was something. But Fred did it. And there's this saying, and you probably have heard it. It was a little corny, but it's a saying that says, when you're choosing your life's career, uh, choose something that you love because you'll never work a day in your life. Have you heard that?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I've never worked a day in my life. I
That's great.
love. It was tough, and being on radio is not easy. It looks like you're just sitting there talking, and
Right.
everybody else is out digging ditches, and you're talking. That's not true. You do a lot. There's a lot behind the scenes that you guys do that people
Oh
don't
yeah.
see to make a radio show, and that's the same with television. You don't see all of that, but I loved every moment of it, the production of it, and then the follow up to it, and the going out to the public stations. And I started to tell you earlier that I started on props, but then I always did McFeely, but then I moved into be associate producer, and then
Hmm.
at one point I moved into being in charge of all the public relations for our
Wow.
company and the program. So in that respect, I would set up interviews for Fred, and I would react, and he couldn't do half of the things people want him to do. He's so busy. So I
Mm.
ended up doing a lot of the appearances, but when I could get Fred to do it, and when he had free time, like the Tonight Show would call, and they wanted. Oh, there was one time you've heard about the Eddie Murphy. You've seen the
Yes.
Eddie Murphy takeoffs. Well, uh, the one time Eddie Murphy did the takeoffs, and we went to meet Eddie at NBC. And
Wow.
Fred actually met him, and Fred was on the Letterman show, and it was in the NBC building. And somebody in the floor crew of the Letterman said, "Go, why don't you go up and surprise Eddie Murphy?" That was it. And it's on the second 8H is where they're rehearsing it, and go on up and surprise him because he was doing all the takeoffs, and we did. And Fred knocked on his dressing room door, and Eddie was there, and I think it was the last person that he thought he would see was Mr. Rogers. Now, this is way back in the 70s, not the
Right.
current time, but back in the and and Eddie Murphy said the real Mr. Rogers, and gave Fred a big hug,
Yeah.
and somebody took a Polaroid picture of the meeting, and I have it somewhere, and I wish I had it right now, but it's the only picture I've ever seen of the two of them together.
Wow.
But but then they wanted Fred to come on Saturday Night Live and surprise Eddie during one of those sketches. There'd be a knock at the door, and instead of it being an actor, it would be Fred.
Mm.
And it never worked out. And, we did go and meet again. And I said, Fred, they think I'm not telling you. Let's go and actually meet them and say hello, and hear what they have to say. And Fred said, I don't know. I'm not an actor. I can't do shtick. But it never did work out. But it would have been funny. Here's how it would have worked. And Eddie would have started the sketch, whatever it would be, and supposedly he wouldn't have known, and knock at the door, and it would have surprised the audience, wouldn't have known. There would be a big ovation, and they both could have sung then Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood
Mm.
and gone to commercial. They could have ended it without too much of a, because it was over once the surprise was there. What do you do to follow
Exactly.
up that? You can't
Sure.
write a sketch. You could just sing the closing song and off to commercial. That would have worked, but it never
Mm.
happened. but Fred did enjoy meeting Eddie. This was way back, just as he was going into his movie career. I think he was just moving into that first
Mm.
movie he did. That's when he was getting really big, and he's been, an institution ever since.
Sure. I love
But
this film, Speedy Delivery, the biography
oh
about you. Oh, it's
yeah,
great. Tell us
well,
about that. Tell us how this happened.
well, let's see. There was a post-grad student at Carnegie Mellon University, which is a wonderful university in Pittsburgh. It has one of the best drama departments in the country, Carnegie Mellon, and engineering, and now robotics. It's known for robotics. And there was somebody doing his post-grad work in film. His name is Paul
Mhm.
Germain, and he came over one day just to look at the studio, and he said, I'd love to do a 10-minute little documentary, mini documentary on you and your work on the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, that's fine. Just let me know what you want to
Mm.
do. You can follow me around. And he did. And it turned out to be a feature 75-minute documentary. And it's a wonderful documentary. Oh, if anybody wants to buy it, they can go to speedydeliverymovie.com, and that's where you can order it. And it's but it was done by Paul Germain, and a couple of his classmates did the movie. And
Right.
I'm glad I have it, because I can leave something to my kids now. My grandkids rather.
Wow. And when you go out on those appearances, the kids absolutely love you. You stay there for hours at a time signing autographs until every last kid gets an autograph. That says a lot about you and Mr. Rogers.
I do, and Fred did the same thing. After a while, it became impossible, and sometimes it's impossible to do. So that's why we started to do these concerts. Fred
Mhm.
would do public stations, but it would take forever because you'd only meet about 10, 20 people at one time. But then we did concerts. But I still go out and do events, and if there are children there and they want to get in a line and get an autograph or just take a picture or just shake hands, I'll do it, and I'll just sit there to the last one does, because I remember when I was a kid, and I don't know who it was. I can't remember. It was a ball player, and he was signing baseballs or things that you brought up to him, and he would sign it and never looked up. And that's not their job. I understand. Then they're tired after a game. But I think you could do a little extra. When you have kids standing in front of you, an adult would, you'd understand if the ball player just handed it to you next, but a
Right.
kid doesn't understand that. And that happened to me once. I was so disappointed because he was a hero of mine. I can't even remember what player it was. What, a long time ago. And so then I told myself, if that ever happens, I'm going to stay to the very last kid goes, and I do.
That's amazing.
And I
And
love it.
you traveled
Yeah.
with the Purple Panda, right? And the Purple Panda was your wife, Nan, at one point, and your son at one point, your daughter at one point?
Oh yes. Yeah, there's a actually there if there's a new program on now called Donkey Hody. It's on PBS, and it's a follow up to, it's more Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and
Mhm.
there's one called Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and they're both
Right.
big successes on PBS. Anyhow, Don Quixote has a puppet version of Purple Panda, but Fred had a costume version of Purple Panda. And I would take it with me because sometimes when somebody can't do it in a different city and it would save airfare, I'd just take the costume and someone would wear it, and an actor would wear it in that city. Well, at the very beginning, my wife, we were dating at the time. I said, "Come on, could you help me? I have to go out to this event. Could you wear the panda costume for me? I can't get anybody that." She came with me. She did it till she was 8 months pregnant, and that was it. She said, "No
Wow.
more, no more." That was our daughter, who's now in her early 40s. So that's how long ago it's been since she's worn the costume.
Amazing.
But
David, my wife wants to say hi real quick. She
oh,
watched you when she was a kid too.
Hi.
Sandy, my wife Sandy.
hi, Sandy. How are you?
Hi.
Speedy
I'm doing
delivery.
good. Great to
And
meet
and
you.
Did you grow up in New York City, or where did you grow up?
No, in Trenton, the suburbs of Trenton.
New Jersey,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
New Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
I
so that's where you guys are right now, in New Jersey, right?
Right.
There's
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Fun.
every time somebody says Trenton, you've never heard of this play, but there's a famous one-act play written by Thornton Wilder, I think, called The Long Day's Journey to Trenton and Camden, New Jersey, something like
Oh,
that. That's the name of the title, the day's journey to Trenton and Camden, and it's a one-act play, and it takes place on a train, I believe. Why when that came into my head when you said Trenton, but
I think we're famous
but
for something. We're in a book, right?
she's
you,
enjoying
you
all your stories, and she just wanted
Yeah.
to come and say hi because you never know if she's ever gonna have this chance again. So
Yes.
oh
Yes.
you know,
I
well,
mean,
you
I
know if
always want.
if you ever are in Pittsburgh, and your audience should know this too, there is a people it's a wonderful city, Pittsburgh. It has a bad rep because it's been a smoky city for years and years and years, and it's changed drastically. However, there's a museum called the Heinz History Center, and it has the original Mr. Rogers set on display, and you can come and see it. The tree, the
So
castle,
cool.
the interior, and it's open to the public. And if you ever come to Pittsburgh, I'll meet you there, and we can let me know.
Oh, that's really
Oh,
sweet.
cool is
Yeah,
that?
I would love that. Are you
Thank you.
kidding?
No,
Sure.
it's not a long drive from where you guys are. New York City's only 8 hours, but Trenton's probably a little, maybe even closer. I don't know. My wife's from Tenafly. Do you know where Tenafly is in New Jersey?
I know where it is.
It's closer to the city. It's over George Washington Bridge, I think. But at any rate, but Pittsburgh has a lot of Mr. Rogers memorabilia, if you want to call it. There's a statue by the Heinz Field in tribute to Fred. And there's a statue in Ligonier, Latrobe, Pennsylvania, his hometown. And there's different. The Children's Museum of Pittsburgh has some of the puppets. So there's a tour you can take of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And there's a Fred Rogers Center on the campus of St. Vincent's College towards Latrobe, and it has the archives. And if anybody is studying children's television or children or child development, they can use it as a resource. It's open to the public. And you can Google all these. The Fred Rogers Center, if anybody's interested to see what they have, that you can email it or Google, however you do that. But anybody who knows computers can figure it out.
Well, David, she's a children's book author as well. So she's working on her second book. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called?
One book that I have, it's available on Amazon, is How Snowflake Finds Her Courage. It's about a cat.
Mr. Rogers would love it. It's so
little
cute.
white kitten. And then my second book, I'm waiting to get it done. It's about a boy and his dog. So
Well, can you send me a copy of the Snowflake?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
She'll autograph it for
Yes.
you. Sure.
And if you
just Gino
That's
can get.
right behind you.
But you can email. You can email me, and I need mailing address. There it is.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, does it have? It's clear.
It's because of the green screen. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the green screen.
I see. Okay. It looks like it's.
Yeah.
I love the illustrations. That's wonderful. And it's a picture book, basically, right?
Yeah, it's pictures, and it's just just some pictures and stuff just so you can see.
And can you get it in Barnes and Noble and places like that?
Well, online, it's available. Yeah, you have to go through a lot of red tape to get it in the store.
But if people ask for it at Barnes and Noble, maybe your viewers can ask for it. They'll carry it. But I know that's a big conglomerate. It's hard to get in. But once you get in,
small author, it's hard for her to get in. And unfortunately, the company that did it, they make all the money. She gets nothing. So it's
my second one will be a little better.
Jimmy knows that.
But you're getting your feet in the door.
Absolutely.
You've got something to show. And so that's I think it's certainly worth your while to try it out. But something, the irony to what you just Fred Rogers and Josie Carey, when they wrote those songs for the early show, the Children's Corner, they sold some of them to a music publisher. And there was a song called Tomorrow We'll Start the Day Tomorrow. That used to end the Mr. Rogers program. But that's the one that was sold. And Fred had to pay to use his own song. So he said, I'm going to write another one. And that's why he wrote It's Such a Good Feeling for the end of the show. But in a way, you're in the same sort of position in a way that the publisher gets but as you get more experience and you get more books under your belt, you'll learn. It'll take a while, but you need something to start with.
Absolutely.
And in a way, that's how Fred started with just a local children's program that and here we are. It's now it's gone from a local children's program with Daniel Tiger on it to a through several stages. It went to Canada and then it went national. And then there's a Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood on PBS now. It's animated. And that one goes around the world. It's in about 50 different countries.
Wow.
And there's a McFeely character in that too. There's a
Yes.
it's animated. And then just recently there's the Don Quixote that's been introduced, all by the Fred Rogers Productions. That's the name of the company. They do another two others that they one is called Pig Plus Cat. That's nothing to do with the neighborhood, but it's just an acquired, and they push it through the system.
Wow.
And then there's one other one that, oh boy, I'm blanking on that name now, but there's a third one that it's not related to the program, to Mr. Rogers, but it's produced by the Fred Rogers Productions.
Wow.
So my point being to all of this is you were starting out with one book, and Fred did the same thing with a small local television program, and he just kept at it. Just kept at it. Who said that? Never give up, never give up. That's Winston Churchill, I think,
Yep.
said that, and that's true. You just keep writing those books because there's a market for children's books too. It's and good ones, and Fred one too. Fred was asked one time by an interviewer, I remember, and they said, "What qualifies you to have a children's television program?" And his simple answer was being a child.
Wow.
He knew what it was like growing up and the trials and tribulations of growing up. Some are bullied, some are unhappy, some are divorced families, et cetera, et cetera. But then he went, taking all of that, being a child, he went and studied child development. What makes children tick? What do I need to do to write a television program for young children? You need to know your audience and what that age group responds to and what their needs are. And that's what makes the neighborhood so unique, is that it's the child development that he studied over all those years. A young child, a 3-year-old, sometimes can't tell between fantasy and reality. That's why he separates the neighborhood of make-believe from the reality part of the program. He lets them know that where the puppets are, that's pretend. And he goes out of his way to separate fantasy and reality for children. That's very healthy, I think, for young children. A 12-year-old, that's different. For a preschooler, they don't do it on their own. So Fred knows young children, knew what their developmental process is, and wrote to that. And I think he did a superb job. And I'm glad I was a part of it. So, if you ever had a spare hour, look on NYU or New Jersey and see if they have a child development class and monitor it and see. That would be a wonderful thing to do. It's just find out, or a children's literature class and monitor it. But a child development class, when you're writing for children, young children, would be very helpful. You can maybe do it online.
I think you can, yeah.
Absolutely.
So you can sit right at home and do it. Even if you don't have to do it for credit, just absorb what they're teaching.
I think Jimmy's got more questions. Jimmy, you have any more questions?
No, I just our audience would love to see Fred's sweater behind you. Can you show it to us, David, once more?
Let's see. I'm going to lift this up. I'm going to move out of the way here. Wait, there,
There we
it
go.
is.
There it
Yeah,
is.
that's
You see?
Fred's sweater.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mr. Rogers
Oh,
sweater. Check that out. How cool is
it's
that?
so
oh
cool.
And
yes.
there,
Love it. Yeah, we
there's
can see it, David. We're good. Yeah,
Aw.
you saw it. Okay.
yeah,
Well,
we're good.
there's a little story to that too, in that Fred gave me two sweaters that he used them on the program, but not as often because sometimes the colors would flare on camera, especially the red. And he said, you know, I don't want to use these, but you why don't you here, you take them. And I brought them home and I had them in our closet in our bedroom. And from one of my birthdays just recently, one of our sons, uh, snuck it out of the house, took it to the framer, and had it framed for me for one of my
Oh, how sweet. That's so
I know.
nice.
That's so
That's so
nice.
great. Isn't that
His name
awesome?
is that's Alex, and he's the youngest. We have a daughter, Catherine Carey. She lives in L.A. and has 3 kids, and then Taylor, the one that Margaret Hamilton held as a baby, he lives in
Oh.
Toronto, and he has 2 kids. And then Alex lives in Pittsburgh, and you know what he does for a living? He's a mailman.
Really?
Aw.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's
He
funny.
works
That's awesome.
Oh.
He works for
Aw.
the U.S. Postal Service, and he's a mailman. He has 2 kids, and so I have one in Pittsburgh, 6 grandkids, and one in Toronto, one in L.A. And our grandkids are coming to visit this summer, so it's going to be a
Beautiful.
house full.
Beautiful.
So cool.
But
You
do
know,
have
before I
kids?
let you go, I wanted to ask you about the movie, Tom Hanks. What do you think about the movie? I know you had a cameo in there.
Yeah, I did have a cameo, and I liked the movie. A lot of people were disappointed because they thought it was going to be a story about Fred, and it was really more of a story of the author. But
Right.
it's a true story, and you know something. I remember the phone rang one day in the office, and I picked it up, and they said, "This is Esquire magazine calling. My name is Tom Janot." And he was the author, and he wanted to do a story on Fred and explained it to me, and I set it up. And in the movie, you can see that same scene. He's talking to the editor, as a woman, it was a man editor at that time, but it's a woman editor giving him the assignment. He goes to his telephone in his cubbyhole in his office at the magazine, calls, and gets somebody on another line in the movie. And that other person really is me, not in the movie, but in actuality, it was me.
Right.
Cool.
And so Fred was interviewed by him first in New York City, and then he came to Pittsburgh. So the movie turned it around a little bit, but basically it's 95% accurate movie. And I like, Tom Hanks got the essence of Fred, I think. You know, you can't.
He's a good character actor. He really is. Yeah,
absolutely.
He
Sure.
I can't take that away from him.
He's growing into a character actor. He used to be a young leading man. Now he's an excellent actor. He does his homework, and they taped a lot, or filmed it, or digitized it, whatever you do now, in the studio where we made Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So it came out of the same studio. A lot of the scenes were actually filmed or taped or whatever at WQED in Pittsburgh. And then we did some location.
Wow.
And we did it at a restaurant downtown Pittsburgh, and it was a great experience of just and I took out to the production office. I visited them one day. I had a production office where everybody was planning for the movie and doing on-site surveys and things like that. And I took out a Mr. Rogers T-shirt for everybody and gave them to all the production people. And I don't know if Tom ever got one or not. Probably not. He came in later. But there was an actor who played Tom Janot. You've seen the movie, right?
Yes.
Did you both see it?
I did not see it yet, but I heard a lot about it.
Well, try to see it. It's on DVD now. You can get it on DVD, and it's a good movie, but it's not the life of Fred. It's
more about the about the reporter, the journalist.
About the reporter, but in the course of that, you learn a lot about who Fred Rogers was too.
Sure.
And it's a very positive movie, and it's not, it's really not a kids movie. A lot of people take their children thinking you're going to see the story of Mr. Rogers, but that's not what it is.
No.
And Tom Hanks was nominated for an Oscar for it. I forgot he won something. He won one of the awards. It wasn't an Oscar, but it was one of the other major awards he got for playing the part. And the man who played the actor is wonderful, who played Tom Janot, Matthew Rhys. He's an excellent actor, and he played Tom Janot. But so if your viewers haven't seen it, you can get it on DVD, and sometimes they show it. I think HBO has it now too. I'm not quite sure, but one of those cable systems has it, and they show it too.
What do you think about David Kroll?
Pardon me?
I just wanted to ask you about David Kroll, about the character that played you in the movie. What do you think of him playing you?
I said, am I really that frantic? But David is no, it's not David. It's
Daniel, actually.
Daniel, yes, Daniel. And he's an actor who lives in Pittsburgh. He does an excellent actor. He does a lot of work at the Pittsburgh Public Theater, and he's a professional actor. And they casted him from Pittsburgh. Some of the people they pre-cast in Los Angeles, but they cast him and some of the others. And in that cameo scene, they wanted us to be in a cameo, and we're sitting in the restaurant close to where Tom Hanks is sitting, and I'm sitting near Mrs. Rogers is in the cameo, and Hedda Sharapin, who still works at the office, along with Margie Whitmer, our producer. We were all in this cameo scene. Bill Eisler, who's the president of the company. Anyhow, you have to look quickly though. Don't look down and get popcorn.
Go ahead,
Don. A minute.
She had a quick question for you, David,
Yes.
and then we're going to let you go. We're going to ask you to do something. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's I just wanted to say there's one show I was especially touched by where I believe it was a blind girl had written into Mr. Rogers about the feeding the fish.
Yes.
And he started saying it because she couldn't see. She had asked if can you hear the sound? Can you hear me? The sound has sort of gone down.
We can hear you.
I can hear you fine.
Yes, there was a letter that came to our company. We got a lot of letters, and Fred Rogers, in case your viewers have never seen the program, he feeds the fish each day to show children that it's another lesson to take care of pets and animals. He feeds the fish, and the blind girl, I think the mother would say what he was doing, and she wrote in to say, "Do you think that you could say you're feeding the fish, Mr. Rogers? Because my daughter she could have been blind or bad vision." And so then he started to say, "Okay, fish, it's time for your dinner," something like that, just to be inclusive of everybody. It was so hard to but he tried. That was Fred. He tried to think of every child, every little buckaroo, as Gabby has said. So it was, but that's what you mean. That's the letter you.
Yeah.
That's it. And the letters that went out, Fred would sign. He read each one. He would respond. Now there are people who got them in order for him, so he would know which category. The tough ones he would do. There would be some that just needed an autograph, so he would do the autograph, and then people would prepare the envelope for that. But the ones that really, like the little girl's letter to the mother of the little blind girl, that would be from him. And he said that was one of the most important things that he wanted to do, because it was such an extension of the program, the mail. And it was part, when you think of it, it's coming from him. And he took the time to try to do his best. Sometimes it would take a couple months to respond to all the mail, but we got it done. We had help though to organize it. It wasn't like Fred had to open every envelope, and that was all categorized. But that letter that you're speaking of, it was in that bunch of mail that came in.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Mhm.
So,
Anyway,
David,
yes.
before you go, because we have to let you go, we could talk all night. I can guarantee
Absolutely.
you, we can
I
ask
could stay on here
questions
till
to you all
midnight
night.
with them.
Right. But we
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, could you do us a favor? Could you do us a sweeper or liner for the radio station, of course, and Jimmy DIELE? Just have to say who you are, Mr. McFeely, Speedy Delivery, whatever you want to say. And then say you're listening to Jimmy DIELE on Hamilton Radio. That's all we
On
want.
Hamilton. Okay, now wait a minute. Deal, but you say it like DEAL, right?
Yeah.
You pronounce it like that. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
Jimmy
try
DIELE.
it on Hamilton Radio.
Hamilton Radio.
Like
Yeah, because
like Margaret. I'll keep my.
whenever you're ready, you can say it. You're fine.
Okay,
Very
let
good.
me get this.
And then we need
Okay.
your address too when you're done, because I want to be able to send this book to you. So you can tell me that off
Okay.
camera.
Yeah, actually, I
Tell me
have it. I think, Doc. So
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
I think.
Yeah,
so.
I think you do have it. I said.
Yeah, I do have it. Yeah, I have.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I got your special delivery today. I was so excited.
Oh, good. It got to you. It got to you.
I
Todd.
did. Special delivery was great.
You know what they did? They asked me what I had in it, and I said a DVD. So I go to that post office often. So they send everything. They sent DVD in media mail. I wanted you to get it, last week, but oh well, you got it. Okay.
Thank you so much. I love it. I love the pictures. Thank you so much.
Let me try it.
Anytime
Anytime.
you're ready. Yes, anytime you're ready.
Hello, my name is David Newell, but you may remember me better as Mr. McFeely, the speedy delivery man from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Now, I'm taking time out for my speedy deliveries to remind you to listen to Jimmy DIELE right here on Hamilton Radio. Speedy delivery.
Wow, so good.
Beautiful.
Thank you
That's
so
awesome.
much.
Thank you
Beautiful.
so
That was
much.
great.
I'm going to
Thank
treasure
you.
that myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was
Okay.
fantastic. Thank you so much, David.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you coming on the show with us.
It's 9. We've been talking for, it's not, we've been talking for an hour.
I know.
Will you
It's
edit
great.
this? Will you edit it, or what will you do?
No, it's staying the way it is. It's perfect.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
absolutely.
It's just,
Love it.
It's just your essence with the way you are, and everybody can see how real you are and exactly why we loved you when we were kids and we love you now.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll take my hat off now, and you can see my bald spots. But you can't when I have the wig on. But
Right.
It's nice to meet you. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your name. Your wife's name?
Sandy
Sandy.
DiPiro.
Okay, Sandy. Sorry. Nice meeting you. I'd love to read the book, so send it on to me. Oh, what a wonderful guest! I could listen to him for hours.
Absolutely.
See, I told you.
His name was Tom Payton, I think.
Tom Payton.
Yes.
Yep.
Give him a
Tom,
shout out.
thank
That's
you
it.
very much. Speedy delivery. Tune
Speedy
in.
delivery. Speedy delivery.
WNEP Channel 13 shows it, and it's on Amazon.com. And PBS Kids has an app for it, and you can stream it. So Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is still in the neighborhood.
Beautiful.
Okay.
I love it.
Did we do it?
Thank
Did we
you.
do it?
You did.
You
Thank
did
you
it.
so
Thank
much,
you
David.
so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, David. Thanks for coming on.
Call anytime. Speedy delivery.
Speedy delivery. Bye-bye, David.
Bye, David. Oh my God, you great show.
He's great.
Oh,
man.
what a great show.
I
What a
love him.
great show.
Absolutely love him.
So we're still on air. So who's coming up next week? Can you give a little rundown?
Let's just do Monday. We have Angelo Capone, Jerry Lewis tribute artist, is going to be here on Memorial Day. That's Monday, actually. And then we have a lot more coming up. I think the week after that is the Fab Four. All four is going to be here, which is awesome. Then we have rock star Robin Beck, Vito Pacone of the Elegants, Jessica Lynn, who is a new country artist, Darcy Donovan, who is an actress. We have Taylor Mason coming up, the ventriloquist, country star Francelle, Bobby Wilson, son of Jackie Wilson's going to be here, which is so excited about that. And let's see. We have an Elvis tribute show coming up in August, and we have Kay Wheeler. She's going to be here. She was Elvis's first fan club president and his girlfriend at that point in time, which is awesome. So we'll talk about that. And also, who else? We got a lot more people on the way, and I'll keep you informed about that. So, Doc, thank you so much. This was a fantastic show.
Well, great
and
show.
Sandy, good to see you again. And thank you, David. We appreciate it. He was
Great
fantastic.
Great show.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Have a good one, Jimmy. Take care.
You too. Take care. Good night, everybody. Thanks for
Good
listening.
night, everybody. Bye-bye.